Welcome to Chapter 5, Getting Started with Python, Part 3. Everything in Python is an object, whether it's an integer, string, list, function, classes, or even modules. All these objects will be stored in computer's memory and it has a unique address. The address is usually represented as integer in Python and it can be obtained using the function id. And then each object is of a particular type. To know the type of an object, you can use the type function. And each object holds some data or value which can be accessed by using the variable name. Now let's look at a Python program. I have a variable x equal to hello. Hello is a string. Now in the next line, I'm trying to print the id of x by calling the id method. I get the id of x, which is an integer value. Now in the next line, I'm trying to print the type of x using the type method. So the type of x is string. In the next line, I'm trying to print the value of x, and the value of x is hello. Now we are using another variable y, and we are saying y equal to x. I'm trying to do the same thing. I'm trying to print the id of y. As you can see, the id of y and id of x are same at this point. Now I'm trying to change the value for the variable x by saying x is equal to pi. Now I'm trying to print the id of x now using the id function. Now as you can see, the id is different from the initial id of x. Now in the last line, I'm trying to print the id of y, and this is the previous value of x, as you can see here. So y retains the same memory address, but x memory address has now changed. In Python, we have various data types. The categories of the data types are, as you can see on the left. It could be text, numeric, Boolean, sequence, set, mapping, binary, or none. In text, we have string data type, and then we can declare a string variable using double quotes or single quotes. And then we have integer where we can store positive and negative numbers. Then we have float where we can store decimals, complex types where you can store real and imaginary numbers, Boolean where you can store true and false. And in sequence, we can store a set of values. We'll see that in details in the coming slides. Then we have set where we have two types called set or frozen set. Then we have mapping where we can store dictionary. And dictionary contains usually details of a person, for example. Then we have none type where we can store the value none. Numbers. Let's take integer example. So age is equal to 30 is of the type integer. As you can see, when I use the type method on age, it prints integer. And when I say height is equal to 5.8, and when we try to find out the type using the type method, it says it's a float. And z is equal to 3 plus 4j. And here when I say type of z, it says it's a complex type. Sequences. So the first data type that we'll see is list. So as you can see, I'm going to create a random list and pass in the values 1, 2, 3, India, and finally United States of America. And when I try to print that random list, I get to see the entire list content. In tuple, I declare number type using the parenthesis. And then I'm trying to pass the first letters of the days of the week, which is Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Then I get the same contents as the output. Then there is a data type called range, which would generate 0 to n minus 1. So if I call range of 2, it generates 0 and 1, because in this case 2 is n minus 1 is 1. And you can print the contents of the range by using the index 0 and 1 and so forth. Since we only have two numbers, we can only use 0 and 1. When we try to print that, we get the actual values, which is 0 and 1. And let's understand when sets are used. Sets are used when you want to do deduplication. If there are duplicate values, by using sets, we can remove those. And then whenever mathematical operations such as intersection, union, difference, and subset needs to be performed, we can use set. Very similar to the mathematical set. Now let's take a look at examples for set. So I have a set of numbers where I have 3, 1, 2, and 2 using the flower brackets. I've intentionally added a duplicate 2 here. And then I'm trying to add another value 4. Then try to print the set of numbers. As you can see, the output has unique values 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now let's take a look at the frozen set. I have digits as a frozen set. I'm passing a list of digits starting from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Then I'm trying to print the digits. What I get is the same set of numbers as a frozen set. Now when I try to print set of numbers is a subset of digits, I get true, because 1, 2, 3, and 4 is a subset of digits. The items 1, 2, 3, 4 are definitely found in the digits. Let's take a look at the none type now. I have a program on the left hand side. So there is a methods or functions. Functions are defined using the def keyword. So def space say hello, then colon. Then after giving a tab, I print hello. So this is how we define a function in Python with a tab as an indentation. And then I have one more function called add, which takes number 1 and number 2 as inputs, and then it returns number 1 plus number 2. Basically, it tries to add two numbers and gives the result as the addition. Now, I have a result variable where I'm trying to add 1 and 4. Then I'm printing the result variable. Then I'm using the same result variable to call the other function, say hello, and then printing the results. Now let's take a look at the outputs. So the first print result will print 5. And when we call the say hello, the print hello would get executed. And then finally, when we try to print result, since say hello does not return any information, the type of the return value of say hello is none. Mapping. We will show you the dict or dictionary data type. So here student details is a dictionary, and we can declare a dictionary using the flower brackets and then giving the key and the value. So in this dictionary there are two keys, name and age, and the value for name is Ram and the value for age is 10. As you can see, Ram is a string but 10 is an integer. And then when we try to print the student details, we get this. When we try to print the type of the student details, we get the type of the student details, which is a dictionary. And when we try to print the student details and pass in the key name, we get the value Ram. Similarly, when we try to pass in the key age, we get the value 10. Immutable and mutable data types. After a variable declaration, if the values can be changed, then it's mutable. The examples are list, set, and dictionary. Otherwise, it's immutable. For example, integer, float, complex, bool, string, tuple, frozen set, and range. These are some of the data types which are immutable. So when you declare a variable with integer and set a value, then it is immutable. If you try to change that value, you get a new object and a new identifier. Please refer to a previous slide, which is discussing about everything is an object in Python to get more information. Now, you might be wondering which data type has to be used in which scenario or use case. So let's go through them one by one. In integer data type, we typically use it for counting or working with whole numbers. Float can be used in use cases where you're trying to measure or find out a percentage or scores containing decimal values. Complex can be used in physics or maths where you're dealing with imaginary numbers. Bool can be used when you're trying to answer questions or find out yes or no or performing any logical checks. String data type has to be used when you're trying to store names, messages, or storing some sentences. Tuple can be used when you want to store data that should not be changed, like coordinates of a location or birth date. Frozen set when you want unique values that shouldn't change. For example, you have some question IDs that are unique and should not be changing. Range when you want to generate a list of numbers um, from one particular starting point to an ending point. List when you want to make a list of shopping items or shopping list items or homework tasks that you want to maintain. Set can be used when you want to have unique things like subjects. And dictionary whenever you want to store data with label information. For example, in the example we saw how we can store student's name and age inside a dictionary.